Hi everyone, Blaine here, and I'm going to be showing you the pre-flight checklist video. I'm going to be doing some changes to it. I was talking to a flight sim buddy of mine, and there's a couple of steps that I did not correctly in terms of ordering, and then one of the things, rewatching one of my videos, I missed entirely, so I really do apologize about that. I'm going to be showing you the correct way to do the power-up procedure. And I also haven't posted anything for about 2 weeks now because I have been really working on another master checklist with a flight sim buddy of mine that shows that's like how real-world pilots would do it. Checking absolutely everything in the aircraft before you start out, which requires a lot more time. But if you really want that immersion, then this is the kind of checklist you're going to want. So I've been working on that, and in that it also includes getting information from SimBrief, from SkyVector, from FlightAware, listening to ATIS for weather and things like that, knowing which runways to depart from and arrive on. So that's a lot of information that I've been working to compile so I can send it to you guys. And that will be ready soon. I'm working on it. But with this checklist that I'm going to show you today, very similar to my other one, just a couple of changes. And this checklist will power the aircraft up. It will take the aircraft to its destination. It's just a lot more streamlined to not have, checking the entire aircraft, but it still works. So this is a great one to use if you're learning how to fly the 737 and just, immersing yourself in the aircraft systems. So with that in mind, we're going to jump into the aircraft. We're in San Diego, and you can see that we're set to cold and dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going to the overhead panel. First thing we're going to do is turn the battery on. We're going to set standby power to auto, and we're going to close the guard. We're going to confirm that the hydraulic pumps are off, which are the two center ones, and they are. We're going to turn our position light to steady, and we're going to close the emergency lights guard. Then what we're going to do is turn the packs to off, and now we're going to align the IRS. And so we have to go all the way to the top here, and we want to select nav for both of these. And then where it says display select, we want to select heading-STS. And this right here is how much time it will take the IRS to align. So while it's doing that, we're going to turn ground power to on, and we're going to wait for the IRS to align. Now, currently I have it set to align in 1 minute because this is the faster checklist, but if you go to your FMC, and you go to, extras, and you go to other, you can select your align time here. And short is, 1 minute, long is about, I think, 6 minutes, and then real is 12. When you do the master checklist that I'm working on that will have everything, you're going to want to use the real align time. But for right now, I have it set to short because I don't want to obviously wait 12 minutes. So, with that in mind, we're just waiting for the IRS to align. When this number goes away, both of these align things will blink, and then we'll know that we're good for that. So we're just going to wait a moment. And we can see that both the lights are blinking right now, so it is aligned, so that's great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn up the lighting in the cabin. So we're going to, where it says panel, that's the one you mainly want to do. If you choose to have, if you want more light, like a floodlight, you can turn on these other ones here. But mainly I just want to see the panels. So then we're going to go to the radio panel. And then we're going to go to the actual aircraft, and we're going to select this one here. And that's going to turn up the lighting so we can see a lot easier. So with that, we're now going to go to the FMC, and we're going to program it. And you can see here it says enter IRS position. Now, that's why none of these screens are loaded, is because the plane doesn't know where it is. So what we do is we want to hit clear, and then we want to go to init-ref. And you can see the IRS position hasn't been set here. So you select next page. You want to confirm that your GPS has aligned correctly and that everything matches. That's why the two align lights were blinking. So we have 32 degrees, 44.0, west 170 degrees, and 12.2. So those are the same. So you can select either one, and then you're going to hit previous page, and you're going to line select set IRS position. And now the plane knows where it is, which is why both of these screens are now lit up. So that's great. We're going to select our reference airport, which is San Diego today. And we're going to line select reference airport. We're then going to go to route. We're going to put our departure runway, which will be 27. We're going to enter our destination, which will be KLAX. And then for flight number, you don't have to add that if you don't want to. That would be your call sign, though. So for me, you know, in the flights I do, it's usually 175. So you can just add that. When I eventually use Pilot Edge, this will be very important because I'll be referencing that number. We then go to Performance Initialization. Cost Index, that depends on the aircraft that you're flying and the company itself. I looked this up recently. For WestJet, it's 25, so I'm going to put that in. Reserves are when basically the computer says to you, hey, we're getting low on fuel, so these are your reserves. So I'm going to put 2 in there, which would be 2,000. And then for zero fuel weight, this is basically the best economical flight level you can fly at, but you don't have to use that. So that's just the computer determining the best flight altitude for you to fly at. So you would go 127 because it's 12,700, and then you would hit execute. We now go to N1 limit, and we enter our temperature here. So we want to look just above N1 right here, and we can see that it's 18 degrees Celsius. So back to the FMC, and we're going to go /18, and there we go. D-rates have to do with noise restrictions and that. For this instance, I'm just going to select 22K and climb 1. And then we go to takeoff. We set our flap configuration to 5, which is our takeoff configuration. We line select this percentage here, which will give us our trim. And then you want to zoom out and you want to go to your trim wheel. And these are in integers of 1. So 4.7 is just going to be just a little bit down. Back to the FMC. And then you're going to select your V-speeds. Now it's very important that you remember your V1 and your VR speed because we're going to program the PFD a little later for that. So we now go to departure and arrival, and we have to select where we're departing from. So KSAN is where we're departing, so we're going to let go here. We're going to choose our SID, which are Standard Instrument Departure, and we're going to choose for this flight Pebble 6 and SLI for the transition. We then go to route and activate, and we hit execute. And now the flight plan is in the system, and then we have to configure it. So now we go to departure and arrival, KLAX arrival. Now star and stars are your standard arrival. Now for longer flights, you're going to want them. It really depends on the flight because from San Diego to Los Angeles is literally a 35-minute flight. Using a star isn't really preferential because it's going to make us go further away from the airport because a star is meant to kind of bring you in from further out. So for this instance, we're going to go direct to Los Angeles, so we don't need a star. In almost all the other flights where you have a longer flight, so like if you were going from Phoenix to Los Angeles, you'd absolutely use a star. And for approaches, this is going to be your runway. So for us, because we're going to be coming in from the east, we want to use one of the east runways, and that's going to be, for this instance, 25 left. And I'm going to use ILS 25 left. Again, approaches here. These are also if you're coming out from a further distance. Because I'm not going to use an approach. I'm going to go direct to. And then we hit execute. So now we select legs, and then we want to go to our EFIS panel, which is right here. And we want to zoom in, and we want to select plan. And then we want to select our distance at 20. And then we go back to the FMC. Now we have to make sure that our flight plan is entered correctly. So you do kind of a weird zoom out thing here where you can see the FMC legs page and the flight, the nav screen all in one here. And you're going to hit step right here, and you're going to go along making sure you have no discontinuities. So as you'll see right here, we have a discontinuity. Right after a transition, the route is not continued. So how we basically fix that is we select the next waypoint, which would be Honda, and then we line select the discontinuity. And you can see this this dash line. That's basically saying if you hit execute, this is where the flight will go. And then we simply hit execute. And now we have a connecting line. And if we continue going step, you can see that it takes us into the runway, and that's great. The blue line here, you don't need to worry about that. That's a go-around if you do a missed approach. That's not applicable in this situation, so we don't have to worry about that. So now that that's done, what we're going to do is go back to the EFIS panel, and we're going to turn it back to map, and then we're going to leave it at 20, because 20 is, you know, it's fine. We don't really need to move it right now. So the flight plan is entered, so that's great. So we're going to go back to the overhead panel, and now we're going to configure some more stuff here. So we're going to turn yaw dampers on, and then we're going to turn our fuel pumps on, Next, we're going to start the APU, which is here. So you have to turn it on, and then you have to hold it down. So we're going to turn it on, and then we're going to hold the start button down. How we'll know that the APU is started is if you look at the dial directly above this and to the left it says EGT, it's a little gauge. That's the exhaust gas temperature gauge. When we see the needle begin to move, that's when we know the APU is started and we can release it. And so we're going to release it. Now we want the exhaust gas temperature to lower, so we're going to leave the needle alone. We're not going to do anything until the needle kind of slows or lowers a bit till about 4, and then we're going to continue on. So we're just going to wait a moment. And the gauge is stopped at 4, so that's totally fine. So with the APU started, we now see that the APU bus generator is available. So with that, we're going to turn the APU generator on. So these are going to be, as you see here, it says APU generator, the bus transfers that are in the center, left and right. So we're going to turn those on. And we heard a ding sound, so that's okay. We're now going to turn ground power to off. And then we are now going to do our engine bleeds. So we're going to turn the left bleed on, followed by the right bleed on, and then the APU bleed on. We're now going to enter our pressurizations right here. So how you find those out is basically through, pardon me, the FMC. So if we go to menu, and we go to FMC, position initial, route, performance initial, N1 limit, and then takeoff, this right here, oh, my apologies. Go to FMC, got ahead of myself there. This right here is the altitude that we've entered that we're going to cruise at, 12,700. So that's going to be our main pressurization at the top. And then how we find our landing altitude is basically what the runway is. So if we go to legs, and we go to the end where our next runway is, we go to next page, sorry, we can see runway 25 left here is at 150 feet. So that's going to be our landing altitude. So we go back to the overhead panel. Our flight altitude is going to be 12,700. Now, because this only goes up in intervals of 5, we're going to have to go a little higher than that. So we're going to go to 13,000. And our landing altitude is going to be 150. So that's now set. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to configure the MCP, or mode control panel. So we're going to turn on the flight directors. We're going to arm auto throttle. We're going to enter in our V2 speed, which was 139. And we're going to enter our altitude, which is going to be 12,700. We're going to arm VNAV and arm LNAV. We're going to set our auto brakes to RTO. And remember how I said keep those two V speeds in mind, V1 and VR? Well, we're going to enter those in as well. So if we go back to the FMC, we go to FMC, position initial, route, pref initial, N1 limit, takeoff, we can see that 129 is our V1 speed and 130 is our VR speed. So we're going to enter those into the computer. So right here, we're going to go to V1, and you can see this little number appeared right here. So we're going to enter 120, was it 129? I know I just looked at it. 129 and then 130, respectively. So we're going to enter in, we're going to use the small dial here, and we're going to enter in 129. And then we're going to go to VR, and we're going to go 130. And then we're going to use the outside wheel, and we're going to go all the way to set. So now that the PFD knows that that's set, so that's good. Now we're going to go back to the overhead panel, and we're going to turn the hydraulics on. And we're going to set the anti-collision light on. Now we're going to basically call for pushback, and then we're going to start the engines. So you can use better pushback or you can use the built-in one. For ease of use, we're just going to use this one. So what we want to do is we want to first go outside the aircraft and see what we're doing here. So we're going this way, basically. Sorry, that way if you follow the mouse. So we're going to want a right pushback.
Okay, I'll send the push card.
And then I always do this. I always hit the parking brake and then do that, just so that it knows that I was
Here we go.
that the brake was on and then it's not. So now we go back to the overhead panel. We're going to set the engine igniter to right, and we're going to set engine 2 to ground. We're then going to scroll down and we're going to look at the information here. Sorry, the N2, my apologies. When this number gets to 25, we're going to pull this number 2 lever here up, which is going to idle the engine. And then we're going to do the same process basically for the first engine. Okay, so now it's at 25. We're going to go idle. We're going to go back to here. We want to wait for this to click to auto before we do engine 1. And now we're going to go ground. And we're going to do the same thing. When the N2 value gets to there, or gets to 25, we're going to put the engine to idle as well. And it has. So now we're going to do this. Now that the engines have fired and are started, we're going to turn window and pitot heat on. Okay. We're going to wait for this to click off, as it has. We're now going to turn the packs to auto. And then we're going to put the engine igniter to the center, and we're going to turn this to continuous. Now we're going to turn the bus transfers. As you can see here, they're now available. We're going to turn those to on, so it's the far left and far right. And there we go. Now we can shut the APU off because we no longer need the APU. So we're going to turn it off now. As we have, when EGT gets to 0, then we turn the APU bleed off. And it's now at 0. So we can turn the APU bleed to off. We're now going to set the taxi lights to on. We're going to configure our flaps for 5. And as you can see here, the flaps will then go to 5. And we're going to reset any error messages that we have. So it just says FMC reset. That's pretty normal, but we know the FMC is good. So now we're ready to taxi. So we're going to begin taxiing to our departure runway. So because we're departing on runway 27, we got to go all the way to the end of the ramp here. My ground speed right here, as you can see, keeps going up. I believe on the ramp you want to be at 10, and then you want to be on taxiways you can be at 15. So I'm obviously 1 over that, but because this is kind of a training video and there's nobody else here, that's okay. When using air traffic control such as Pilot Edge, you'd really want to make sure you do that correctly. Obviously in a training video you want to do everything correct as best you can. Like I said though, because we're just the only ones on this ramp, it's fine for right now. Now if you look at the nav display here, we got a bunch of different waypoints in blue and things like that. You can remove those or configure those if you want if you're using the Zibo mod. This is the Zibo mod, so you would just on your EFIS panel here, you would turn some of these things off. So for me, I usually have, and you can see here it says STA and APTT, so I would turn this off and I would turn STA off, and I always turn on the terrain and the weather. If you've just got into flight simulation and you quite like it and things like that, getting peripheral devices such as like a throttle and a flight stick and rudder pedals and stuff like that, you know, they are expensive, but they do make all the difference. I got rudder pedals about 6 months ago, and I just started to really kind of embrace them, and I have to say they're absolutely fantastic. They make taxiing and flying a lot easier. They're a bit weird to get used to, but they are very worth it. So if you're looking to get into flight sim as a serious kind of hobby, I recommend getting, you know, rudder pedals and a throttle and a flight stick and that. I'm looking at getting a yoke, but I haven't figured out which one I want to get yet. So we have 2 more exits and then we can go. We're coming up on our exit now. So we're going to make a left turn here, and we're going to go to the overhead panel, and we're going to turn our taxi lights off and put our landing lights on. And we've done the full power-up procedure. We've programmed the flight FMC, and we're all good to go. So all you have to do now is select toga, put your throttle power to 40%, and you're ready to take off. So thanks for watching, and there'll be more content soon. Be sure to hit subscribe to be notified when new videos are posted. Thanks for watching.